Um, I am Erin Niehoff, and I'm the chair of SEAC. Thank you all for joining tonight for this meeting. And again, I want to start by noting that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. Please always keep yourself muted when you are not speaking. To keep the meeting on schedule, please wait your turn to speak and hold questions until the end of each speaker's presentation. If you wish to be recognized to speak, please raise your hand so the chair can call on you. And there's also a chat function, but please remember that those who are calling in by phone cannot see the chat, and everything typed in the chat may be posted in the public meeting minutes. I'll do my best to verbally communicate relevant information that appears in the chat, and I'd encourage all of you to share pertinent information verbally rather than just relying on the chat. If you are calling in by phone, and I don't know that there are currently any phone callers, but press.
There is one person.
One person. Okay.
So, yep.
If you are calling in by phone, press *6 to turn your microphone on and off to make a comment or question. And finally, if at any time during this meeting you require technical assistance, please contact our staff person for help. That would be Kim. His email is kim.havey, Havey, @minneapolismn.gov. Are there any questions as we get started? And for those who are just joining too, we have some new SEAC members who will not be official until our November SEAC meeting, but they are joining us here at our October meeting. And so welcome to those folks. We'll make sure that we go through introductions, but first we do need to call this meeting to order. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask him to call the roll so that we can verify the presence of a quorum.
Terrific. Thank you. Yeah, just let me know you're here or say present. Max Dalton.
Here.
Indigo, David Liu.
Sorry. 2 more seconds. I forgot to read the fact that if you could also just introduce yourself with your organization or affiliation as applicable, especially for those new SEAC members who might be joining us on the call today. So sorry about that, Kim.
So no worries. Sorry, I forgot that too. So Max, we'll go back to you if you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself and your organization or affiliation or interests. We'll go with that.
Yeah, hi to the new members. My name is Max Dalton, and here on SEAC as a representative Ward 1 in Northeast Minneapolis.
Thank you. Indigo.
Hello, I'm Indigo. I'm with Minnesota Youth for Climate Justice, and I live in Northeast Minneapolis, and I can't remember my ward right now.
No problem.
Thank you. Mark Denon. Sure he is here. Okay. Tess Dornfeld.
Hi, Tess Dornfeld, she, her. I have a professional expert seat on SEAC, and I'm a resident of the Holland neighborhood in Ward 1 in Northeast.
Thank you. Matthew Douglas May.
Hey, I'm Matthew. I use he, him. I live in Ward 10 and work for the Center for Energy and Environment.
Great. Sandy Fazeli.
Hi, this is Sandy Fazeli, Ward 1, a SEAC member, and I work at the National Association of State Energy Officials.
Thank you. Lauren Fleming.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. I am in Ward 10 now, and I am an architect working in the city of Minneapolis.
Great. Thank you. Divine Islam.
click it.
Divine. I don't think she's on. Leslie Jackson.
Hello, I'm Leslie Jackson, Ward 4. Not only am I a SEAC member, I'm also a EJC fellow and co-chair of the Northside Green Zone Task Force.
Thank you. Anna Johnson. Don't see her on our list there. Toya Lopez. Barbara Lundy.
Hi, I'm Barbara Lundy in Ward 13, and I'm a board member of the Minnesota Renewable Energy Society.
Thank you. Jacqueline Cepeda.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I use they, them pronouns. I'm currently on the board for the Minnesota Mycological Society. And I also do environmental stewardship community organizing in Minneapolis.
There's somebody who's logged in as anonymous on here, and I can't mute them. But that's the voice that's coming through.
That's Tess, I think.
No,
Nope, I'm muted.
Tess is herself. So I don't know who anonymous is.
Oh, yeah, that
Okay.
is funny. It's funny. I can't.
Looks like they're muted now, though. So,
Okay.
All right.
Great. Sorry, and that leaves us with Erin Niehoff, our chair.
Okay. So I'm Erin Niehoff. I use she, her pronouns. I just started working with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Previous to that, I worked for a nonprofit environmental organization that was based in Minneapolis. I live in Ward 12 in the Howe neighborhood. So welcome to those who are new. So right now I'd like to, for those who are on the call, we're gonna start with Marin Demasi, if she's on, followed by Hannah, then Suzanne, and then Madeline. If I'm mispronouncing your names, please correct me as you introduce yourself.
Okay.
So, starting with Marin.
Oh, I think Nick had a quick question.
Oh, Nick.
I didn't get roll call.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry. I
that would be-
apologize. You're
I don't
right.
know
I
if
skipped you.
I don't know if anybody else was missed.
I'm sorry. So yes, Nick, sorry, I jumped over you. I apologize.
Okay. I'll be quick. Nick Minderman, use he, him pronouns, resident of Ward 7. And prior to, this is my second term on SEAC, and prior to that I did 4 years, 2 terms on the Capital One Range Improvement Committee for the city of Minneapolis as a volunteer there as well. And my day
Great.
job is energy efficiency program planning.
Thanks, Nick, for
Thank you.
speaking up. Okay,
So that means that just to follow through, that means we do have 11 SEAC members in attendance, and that is a quorum for tonight's meeting.
Perfect. All right. So jumping back, if the 4 new SEAC members who will be official come the November meeting are on, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves. We're going to start with Marin, followed by Hannah, Suzanne, and then Madeline. So Marin, are you on? Does not appear to be. So jumping to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Bone. I actually have recently legally changed my last name. So my name is actually Hannah Jenkins. And I live in the Lyndhurst neighborhood. And I work for Minnesota Wastewise Foundation. So I'm a sustainability specialist. I help businesses with waste reduction and recycling projects.
Cool. Welcome.
Thank you.
Suzanne?
All right, I'm Suzanne Savannah Canson. I use she, her pronouns, and I work in Minneapolis. I'm the sustainability specialist for Allina Health, and am, my home is at the Allina Commons near Abbott Northwestern Hospital. Before I was here, I ran the sustainability program for McAllister College for 12 years. I started the Sustainable Campus Initiative at the University of Minnesota, and I got a PhD in conservation biology. So it's the short version of me.
Welcome. And then Maddie.
Hello, my name is Madeline or Maddie Henderson. I moved to the Twin Cities last summer during the pandemic. I work for Medtronic. I am a biomedical engineer, but I am very passionate about sustainability, and I am trying to get into that intersection of medical and sustainability. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. So with that, we'll be rounded back up to our 19 members as opposed to the 15 that we've been at. So before we move on, I would just want to give an opportunity for community members or others who have joined us today to unmute themselves and briefly introduce yourself with your name and organization or affiliation as applicable.
I'll go first. My name is Kelly Kish. I use she, her pronouns. I work for the Public Works Division of Solid Waste and Recycling for the City of Minneapolis. And I am a Ward 11 resident and going to speak to you in a little bit here about some waste updates and a focus on plastics. So thank you for having me and happy to be here.
Great. Is the person who's labeled as guest for me on right now? Hearing none, moving on to the person who's listed as anonymous. Not seeing any. So I think with that, we can probably move on. So let's see, gotta pull that open. So we've gone through the roll call, adoption of the agenda and acceptance of the minutes. So is there anybody who has any amendments or changes that they'd want to see for the minutes from last month, or any amendments that they would like to see to tonight's agenda? Anybody want to make a motion about accepting both things as they're written then?
This is Sandy. I move.
Okay, great. Somebody want to second? Barbara's raising her hand, but we need to hear your voice say it if you're going to second it.
This is Tess. I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Tess. And then Kim will call roll.
Sorry, I was reacting a little slow there to turn off the microphone. Okay, so approval of the October 20th agenda today and minutes from the September 23rd meeting. Just say yay or nay on this. Max Dalton.
Yay.
Indigo.
Yay.
Mark. Tess.
Yay.
Matthew.
Yay.
Sandy.
Yay.
Lauren.
Yay.
Divine. Leslie.
Yay.
Anna. Toya. Barbara.
Yay.
Nick.
Yep. Yes.
Jacqueline.
Yay.
Aaron.
Yes.
We have 11 yays, so that motion carries.
Great. All right. So now, before we jump in, we typically start our meetings with a land acknowledgement statement. So as we meet here today, we are reminded that Minneapolis is situated on the homelands of the Dakota people, an area that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. We are home to Indigenous people from more than 30 different nations. As a city, we have a responsibility to care for the land on which we live and work and all its natural surroundings. This stewardship is an integral part of our involvement in this commission, and we honor it as we begin our meeting. I'm going to open up this space to discuss ways in which we can support Indigenous people in our community. So if there's anyone who has something that they would like to share, feel free to hop in here. I was going to say, if you do come to the open streets on Minnehaha, which I know that we'll also talk about later, because we will have a table there at SEAC, some of the different groups, like the American Indian Council and stuff, I think have tables at this upcoming Saturday one. So come and find out more information, I guess.
I was going to add one kind of interesting thing I read last week, and it's been kind of making the rounds in the foodie world. But Owamni, the sous chef, his restaurant, which is right on next to the Stone Arch Bridge there, was named one of the top 50 restaurants by the New York Times. Top 50 restaurants in the United States by the New York Times. The other one, yeah, it's pretty amazing. So the other one was also it's shoot, it's something
and
in
Mimi.
Suki and Mimi, yes.
Yeah.
Suki and Mimi, yes. And Uptown was also another one from Minnesota, both of them in Minneapolis. So interesting.
I'll add with the elections coming up very soon. Be sure to keep this also as something that you bring up with candidates, city council, mayor, and park board for sure. All of those incumbents or candidates should have something to say, I think, about their plans with regard to our Indigenous neighbors and recognition of the history of our land.
Great point. Thank you, Tess. And I know that we were talking about opening this up for talking about the Indigenous people in our community, but just to follow up on Tess's thing about the election, at this point, the election offices up on Hennepin, 980 Hennepin Avenue, are open every day for some kind of early voting. So if you want to vote early, you can do so even on a Sunday if you wanted. So go out there and get your vote in. All right. With that, I am going to move on into our presentation. And so I know that at our last meeting, we talked about having a presentation on mobility hubs, but unfortunately, due to an open RFP, we can't have that particular conversation today. So we moved that to the November agenda. And we had also talked about discussing plastic and plastic waste. And so we invited Kelly to come and speak with us here today. So thank you, Kelly, for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's interesting timing, you know, when it rains, it pours, but I just gave an hour-and-a-half long discussion presentation with the Tangletown neighborhood on plastics like 2 weeks ago, and they have a whole series around low waste living that I encourage you all to check out. They also did a really fantastic series on textiles last year, and all of those presentations are recorded and available on their website too.
I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember how I signed up for this, but Sustainability Sam has like an email thread from the Tangletown neighborhood talking about zero waste stuff. And then Tess, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is the RFP closing before the November meeting then?
I'm looking at Kim. He's nodding his head.
Yes, it is. So they will be here in November.
Thanks for that. So, Kelly, rains and pours. Had
Oh yeah,
conversation
so
with Tangletown.
yeah, presented to Tangletown on plastics recently, and everyone loves talking trash, so happy to be here. And with that, I will share my screen. I saw the presentation was linked in the agenda, so you all have access to it after this meeting as well. But I want to give a quick little overview just on, waste and recycling, and then I'll dive more into plastics. But just a quick reminder, so solid waste and recycling, per city ordinance, we provide collection services to all buildings in the city that have 4 or fewer units, so a 4-plex or smaller. We also pick up from a whole bunch of larger buildings that have opted in to have city collection services. We pick up from the neighborhood parks, and most of the city buildings as well. So one thing on here to note, yard waste collection does end the week before Thanksgiving. So, the rain today really helped get a lot of those leaves out of the trees, but just, keep that in mind that you have until the week before Thanksgiving to actually get those leaves out, bagged up, and put out for pickup. And then a question we often get is, why we need to prevent this stuff from going to the landfill. So I always like to start out presentations or somewhere within the presentation, discuss what is actually happening with waste collected in the city. So none of our garbage from what's in our black carts outside our house does go to a landfill. It all goes to the Hennepin Energy Recovery Facility, known as HERC, the waste to energy plant in downtown Minneapolis, where it is burned for energy. All of our recycling that's picked up goes over to Eureka Recycling. Well, they sort it into about 15 different categories and then sell it to various markets throughout North America. And then our organics and yard waste, although they are collected separately, they both are brought to the little purple dot here, which is the SKB Malcolm transfer station. It's right over by the Surly Brewery off of University and 280. And from there, it gets put into semi-trucks and driven all the way down here to SET's organics composting site in Rosemount, Minnesota. The reason we do that is because we, one, don't want our small vehicles with lighter weights driving all that distance. So the transfer station allows that material to be consolidated and send fewer trucks the farther drive. And then the South Transfer Station is our resident drop-off location for extra garbage, construction, demolition debris, and large items. And I will note that some of the construction and demolition debris from that site does actually go to a landfill. And that's the only component of Minneapolis residential waste that is landfilled. So all of our trash from our black or gray carts outside the house does go and get burned for energy. So now on to recycling. So recycling is not mandatory in the city. It is voluntary. And 97% of our customers do have a recycling cart. The other 3%, some people, when we first rolled out the carts, they said they didn't want one. Some other folks, we may have taken their carts away for continuously contaminating them. But overall, it's a very high participation rate in the program. And I think more than 3% of our customers have more than one recycling cart because they need the extra space, especially in our age of buying things online. We've got, more boxes and all sorts of stuff that we need to have space for. And just keep in mind that there is no cost to get an additional recycling cart. If you want one, just give us a call and we're happy to have one delivered to your house. I already mentioned recycling goes over to Eureka to be sorted. Our contamination rate for recycling is 9.32% in 2020, and that is up a little bit from 2019. But good news is our most recent sort that we just did about a month ago is starting to bring that back down again. And, of course, due to the pandemic, people were cleaning things out of their house and, doing a lot of wish cycling. That lovely term that's popping up in the news a lot, of folks thinking, oh, it's metal, it can be recycled. Oh, it's plastic, it can be recycled, and that not always being true. So another thing that may have led to a slight increase in our contamination is due to the pandemic at the early start, when we didn't really know how COVID-19 was transmitted. We wanted people essentially handling material as little as possible. So We had the crews only leaving educational tags saying there's an issue with your cart when the cart was really bad. Other than that, they were just instructed to dump the cart and continue on with their route. So an important thing with recycling is that only the items that are on the actual guide that comes in the mail are items that the recycling facility is able to sort out and properly have markets for. So yes, although all metal can be recycled, Eureka's facility is not designed to handle any other metal than your cans, bottles, pie tins, clean aluminum foil. So any pipes, poles, a bucket of nails, yes, they can be recycled, but they need to go to a scrap metal location. So when you get your new guide in the mail, hang on to it, post it somewhere in your house, or memorize it. Or, if you do misplace it, you can give us a call. We can send you another one. Or you can always go on our website, which I will talk about in a little bit here as well. So now, next on recycling, what makes something recyclable? First and foremost, we have to have a way to collect it, whether that is picked up curbside or brought to a drop-off location. A means of getting the material and a large quantity of it is the very first step. The second step is in terms of what goes in your recycling cart is, again, it has to be able to be sorted out, in our case, by the recycling facility. And then the last step is someone has to want to do something with it. If you collect the material and put all of this effort and energy into getting it and no one wants to use it to make a new product, well, then everything you've done is just adding additional steps for it ultimately to end up in the trash. So I'm going to go through a couple of specific materials where some of these pieces might not come into play, and then I'm going to pull up a slide that's some common recycling questions. I won't go through all of them, but if there's any you do really want me to touch on, I can for sure do that as well. So plastic bags can't go in recycling carts. They're in fact the biggest issue we see in recycling carts. And the reason they're a problem is the sorting facility uses a lot of turning gears and equipment to sort mostly our two-dimensional items, aka our papers, from our three-dimensional items or our containers. And what happens is those plastic bags will get wound around and around the gears. And the only way they can get them out of there is to physically shut down all of the equipment. People have to climb inside the machinery with box cutters to cut that stuff out. And it's not just plastic bags, it's really anything that's long and stringy. In the industry, they call them tanglers. So garden hoses, window blinds, strapping tape that thankfully we don't see too much at home. All of that gets wound around those gears so much that the spaces in between where the containers would fall through can no longer do so. So they start traveling over top with the papers. So plastic bags, they can be recycled if they're clean and dry and brought to a plastic bag recycling location. Most grocery stores, big retailers have drop-off locations. Hennepin County accepts them at their hazardous waste facilities. And they are recycled primarily back into plastic lumber, or that can be used for patio furniture or decking or other durable plastic items like that. And then keep in mind, it's not just plastic shopping bags, but it can be this case wrap that you get, you get a case of water, although I would advise you against buying cases of bottled water. It can be the stuff that comes around your toilet paper or paper towels. Your food bags, zipper bags, all sorts of different things. So it's not just the retail shopping bags that can go into those containers. And this website, plasticfilmrecycling.org, has a really good list of the different types of items that are accepted at all the plastic bag drop-off locations. Now, another really tricky one that we see a lot of here in Minnesota with our large quantity of microbreweries is this flat packaging that a 6-pack or a 4-pack of cans will come attached to. These are called PackTech containers. And how I just talked about with plastic bags, the very first step is that they separate two-dimensional from three-dimensional. And these guys, being so flat, they act more like a piece of paper than a container. So that by themselves in the recycling process, they're going to most likely end up with the paper. So the preferred method for these to be able to be recycled, because they are number 2 plastic, so same as your milk jugs or laundry detergent, shampoo bottles, lotion bottles, they're highly recyclable. But to make sure that it's easy to collect them and recycle them, the best option here is to put them in, to bring them to a drop-off location. And so PackTech acknowledges the fact that they really want to make the system work. And they have worked with all of these green dots here on the map in Minneapolis to be drop-off locations. So most of these are going to be local microbreweries. So I know a bunch of my friends do this. I do this. I don't get them too often, but I keep a stack in the basement, and whenever I'm going to one of these places, just like I do with my random plastic bags that I have around, bring them to a drop-off location when I'm going that way. So just those are 2 really common tricky items that are recyclable. And now, especially with the advent of COVID and meal delivery services, here's a whole bunch of problematic stuff that we're now seeing. So we've got, we like to call this PET fluff, where it's number 1 plastic in both a film form and also a fluff form. We've got Mylar lined bubble wrap bags. We've got Mylar lined foam. We've got all sorts of stuff that you see in many meal delivery services and or now just regular shipping containers arriving at your house. And you see the recycling symbol on many of them. This one says it's made out of 100% recycled. This one you see actually like 4 different recycling symbols. So it's obvious. Well, let me back up here. This guy over here actually says, put me in your curbside recycling bin. And so a challenge that we have in the industry is that companies, there's not really regulation on when they can or cannot put these types of claims on their packaging. So we, at the end of the stream, are playing catch up to try and educate the general public on where these types of items go. So again, just keep in mind, if it's not on your recycling guide or very similar to something that's on the recycling guide, it may not be able to go into your recycling cart. And if you have questions, many options for you to find out the correct answer on how to manage that material. And I'll go through some of those here in a little bit as well. And I'm going to do a quick look at the chat here. Yes, wait times. We are very behind on cart service. But the reason we're behind on cart service is, like many other industries, we're quite short-staffed right now. So there are some days where we don't have anyone out doing regular cart repairs, deliveries, pickups, because we need all available bodies to make sure we're getting the garbage, recycling, and organics picked up. So that has led to increased wait times for deliveries. And we have had staff working on Saturdays to help us get caught up. And I hear this past Saturday, they did like 300 work orders. So we're slowly getting back there. But again, like many other industries, we're also quite short-staffed on the field side. And then a lot of the plastic waste I have is foil-lined bags from chips. Those are not, unfortunately, accepted in plastic bag drop-off locations. A test I like to do, and I should have been smart and brought a bag up here, but plastic bags that are stretchy, you kind of put your thumbs in there and you can kind of stretch them in 2 directions. Pretty much all of those bags are going to be accepted in those plastic bag drop-offs. And unfortunately, the chip bags are just really not stretchy. And again, the foil plus a plastic, it's going to be a multi-material. Oh boy, sorry, hit that there. Those ones, unfortunately, have to go in the trash. And I know it's the hardest to give up. Who doesn't want a good tortilla chip every once in a while? So a little deeper dive into contamination. In 2018, we had residents do some cart checking for us as they were piloting a new picture-based educational tag. And this is just a nice little overview of some of the things they found. And again, here's the plastic bag and film issue. So 30% of the carts that they checked and the pieces they found were plastic bags, wrapper, film. And then another 10% was recycling that was actually in plastic bags. So that's 40% of contamination that was found was just plastic bag related. Bagged recyclables are a problem at Eureka. They're not going to, take the time to rip every bag open, hoping that it's clean recycling inside, because they could rip it open and it could be a bunch of trash. They actually did a study a couple years ago on the cost to their facility to manage plastic bags from workman's comp of actually the repeatedness of ripping open bags to the downtime of the facility, to climb in the equipment to cut them out, to the actual disposal cost to get rid of all the bags that they receive at their facility. It costs them $75,000 a year to manage plastic bags that should never have been put in the recycling cart. So if you come away with nothing today, please come away with, don't ever put plastic bags or film in your recycling cart, and please tell at least 5 other people the same thing. Because some other studies we've done have shown that the word of mouth, you get really excited about it and talk to your neighbors, they do the same thing, is much more effective than any mailer, any cart hanger, any possible other thing that we could do. So please help us spread the word on no plastic bags. So some other common recycling questions, I will touch on a couple of them. Are my recyclables actually recycled? What do the numbers mean? What plastics can be recycled? I keep hearing only 9% of plastics are recycled. What does that mean? Why not black plastics? What do I do with lids? I'm going to start with the numbers. So the chasing arrows recycling symbol with a number in it was never put on plastics to tell if the plastic was recyclable. It was put on there to identify what type, or again, that number in there, what type of plastic it is, so that recyclers know what the chemical makeup is of that item and know if it can be recycled with other similar items. A new trick we are teaching people to remember which types of plastics have strong markets and can go in your recycling cart is to make the I love you sign in sign language. So middle finger, ring finger down. You now have plastics numbers 1, 2, and 5, counting from your thumb up. Those are the plastics that have strong markets and can go in your recycling cart. Now, if you go back to the image of the recycling guide, you will see it was pretty much all food, beverage, laundry, bathroom type containers, and then our papers that don't come in contact with food. And in that case, number 3s do not exist in that realm. Number 3 is PVC. Number 1 place you're going to find that is in plumbing fixtures. You will also find it in shower curtains or like really thick plastics like an inflatable mattress. And you will also find the only kind of close place you're going to find it is if you buy like an electronic or a toy that comes in that super zip sealed packaging, like a new headphones, and you need a scissors to cut it open, and then you still almost always cut your hand open trying to get the thing out. That stuff is mostly number 3s. And then our number 4s, most of those are going to be plastic bags and film. The only 2 places in the past like 5 years I have seen a number 4 in the food, beverage, laundry, bathroom realm are going to be a honey bear and a little lemon squeeze, but pretty much everything else in food, beverage, laundry, bathroom is going to be a 1, 2, a 5, or a 6. So keep an eye out for those number 6s because they do not have strong markets. And again, without someone wanting to buy it and turn it into something new, there is no reason we should be collecting it and sorting it out. So I'm going to dive real quick into what happens to recycling. So a lot of, it's really hard for the city of Minneapolis or even the Twin Cities to like send a news outlet over to New York, to talk to the Wall Street Journal, to talk to New York Times and say, hey, your recycling stories you're printing are, really confusing people and giving folks less confidence in the recycling system here in the Midwest. Please note that recycling, all waste is incredibly local. And while what is in some of those stories that, recycling is not being shipped overseas anymore, or that all of the, X, Y, or Z that we're collecting is actually just going in the trash, that is true for some places. But here in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, it's always been it made more sense to ship materials directly to a recycler than to get them to a coast where they can then go overseas. So none of our recyclables were really going overseas in the first place. We were impacted by the foreign markets not taking recycling anymore, but that is a simple supply and demand formula. Now that the local supply is so high, the pricing's dropped. I'm also happy to say we've seen a considerable rebound on the markets domestically. We're making new paper manufacturing plants, but yes, pricing has since gone back up. But all the national stories, just take them with a grain of salt because they're not necessarily accurate with what's happening in our area. And just a couple facts. Oh, now you can see my notes. So a couple facts from Eureka themselves. Our number one plastics are going to places in Wisconsin, Michigan, Alabama, Indiana, Illinois, and Georgia. And they're being made back into, sometimes into bottles, some into other food containers, and a lot of it's going into being made into carpeting. Our number twos, or our milk jugs and laundry detergent bottles, are going to facilities in Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa. And most of those will get turned either back into those laundry detergent type bottles, durable plastic decking material, fencing, patio furniture, and an example here in the state, By the Yard uses a lot of the number two plastics that come out of the recycling programs here. And then our number fives, that's going to be like your yogurt, sour cream, cottage cheese containers, are being turned into paint cans, car parts, and other durable plastics at places at facilities in Alabama, Missouri, and Canada. And so one thing you can see over here on the slide that 100% stay within North America. They do send a small amount of material up to Canada, as I mentioned, with some of the plastics, and they do send a little bit of paper down to Mexico on occasion as well. And it's just the sheer fact that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. If there's a fire at the paper mill in St. Paul, they have to have somewhere to send the paper. So maintaining those relationships and maintaining markets and having more than one of them is what helps make our systems stable. All right, so now we're going to dive into our current situation here in Minneapolis. So 2020 waste overview. You can see, and this is just, again, the people that solid waste and recycling collects from. So it's going to be those buildings with 4 or fewer units. 20.12% of our overall waste was recycled. The city does have a goal to recycle or compost 50% of citywide waste by 2020. And you can see, again, this is just residential. So on the residential sector, we have not met that goal. What we do not have is the appropriate generation and waste recycling, composting, etc. information for all of these other sectors that we need to actually verify whether or not citywide have we met the city's goal. We do not currently have that data. It is data that we are working on getting. But if you think about, a large office building, the vast majority of what's going to come out of that office building is going to be recyclable material. So I am hopeful that we met the goal, and I'm also hopeful that in a year or two we will actually know if we have met the goal. But another tricky thing with this method of measuring is it's really easy for us to reduce a lot of things that are in this recycled portion of the pie. Like, we can change our behaviors and not buy bottled water. We can change our behaviors and, eat more fresh foods, which reduces the number of boxes or the number of other recyclable packaging we may get at home. The issue here is this is all weight-based. So this doesn't actually tell us how much of the newspaper, for example, made it into the recycling cart versus the garbage cart. That is what we would call a capture rate study, to look at individual materials and see how well are we doing at properly putting that material in the right location. That is a study that we are planning to do next spring and actually go and pull garbage, recycling, and organics carts from individual households, sort them out, and see at the household level how much stuff made it into the right cart. Because if we find that 90% of aluminum cans went in the recycling, we're doing pretty dang good at recycling our aluminum cans. That type of study is also going to provide us with a lot of great information on how we can change our educational programs, improve them, and actually maximize our waste diversion. Much better than a weight-based recycling goal. So now, we recycled 20%. What's in the trash? Hennepin County in 2016 sorted Minneapolis residential trash, and they did use a whole bunch of generation data to kind of come up with some capture rates of various material types, but they didn't actually sort recycling, they didn't actually sort organics, so it's all slightly hypothetical. So the study we do next year will help us have a better picture of how well we're actually doing with individual materials. But so the study that Hennepin County did found that 41% of what's in the trash is trash. There is no other place for that to go. We've got plastic bags and film. Almost a full percent of that was in the trash that could have gone to a drop-off location before it became all messy and gunky, going into a garbage truck. 14% recyclable, and then 25% organics, but a huge asterisk here is they did this sort right as we were starting to roll out the organics program. So I take this information with a little bit of a grain of salt, but one of the reasons they did this study was to evaluate if meeting the state's recycling goal, and our goal you see here is 80% by 2030. The statewide goal is 75% by 2030. So the county wanted to see, is that feasible? And is that feasible at a residential level? And through the study, the conclusion essentially is that 75% is feasible if 100% of people recycle or compost 100% correctly 100% of the time. So it's really not feasible at just the residential to be at that 75% recycled or composted statewide goal. So that's, again, why we need the data from the commercial sector to really evaluate the city as a whole. But what that also means is we really just got to work on reducing the stuff we don't need overall, because the ultimate goal of waste management isn't to recycle better. It's not, I mean, that is a goal. It's not to, divert as much as possible, but it's to not produce it in the first place. Waste reduction is the very first step of, reduce, reuse, recycle. So some tips on how we reduce what's in the trash, first, don't buy it if you don't need it. Choose items that can be reused. Here I have a glass bottle. Yes, it has a plastic cap, but I actually got these I've dug them out of the recycling elsewhere, and I keep these in my refrigerator filled with water. I reuse it day in, day out. Fill it up with tap water, put it in the fridge, and then I have a nice ice cold glass of water. It's wonderful. Avoid things that have packaging. Got a picture here. You can buy the t-shirt with cardboard or one in plastic. Take your pick. This can go in your recycling cart. The plastic, can be recycled through a drop-off, but there's so many other negative impacts of the plastic manufacturing, which I'll touch on briefly in just a second. Go digital with your bills. Shop used. Get secondhand items. And make sure that you are repairing, mending any item you have to prevent it from being trashed as long as possible. And then on the manufacturing side, our voices have a huge impact. So contacting manufacturers to say that you do not support what they are using, or say that you're going to stop buying their products unless they change how they're packaging them, can actually go quite a long way. Encourage them to design their products for disassembly or reuse. I'll talk about a bill at the state and I believe federal level now on that in a little bit. And then another important one is using post-consumer and post-industrial material in the creation of their products. So a lot of companies will do the voluntary, we're going to, use 20% post or, 20% recycled content, but without the disclaimer of where that recycled content is coming from, it doesn't necessarily mean as much. So a way I would like to differentiate like post-industrial, think you're making a big old sheet of paper and it's not going to print out just perfectly. So you can trim all the edges so it's nice and straight, and taking that trimming and putting it back at the start of the process, that would be post-industrial. So it never went out to a consumer. It came from the plant itself. And post-consumer is going to be the stuff we put in our carts outside our house. So the companies can make the claims, but there's nothing really holding them to making the claims unless it's their shareholders or unless there's some form of regulation or law adopted that actually requires that. And that is the piece that will really help us, particularly with plastics, get more infrastructure and better equipment in place to actually improve the recycling of plastic containers. Again, we shouldn't use them in the first place, but requiring manufacturers to meet a minimum recycled content will still be beneficial for the waste system overall. Moving on to manufacturing. Oh, and I will also note, I can ramble on forever. So if I'm getting close to my time limit, just shoot something in the chat or let me know. But manufacturing of plastics, one thing a lot of people don't know is that 99% of plastics are a byproduct of the fracking industry. So, you've heard stories about, plastics leach chemicals into your food. They get caught in the waterways. Yes, there are downstream disposal implications to plastics and health implications to them at every stage of the life cycle. But the manufacturing of them is really disproportionately affects the communities where these fracking facilities are, where the processing and refining facilities are, and most of them tend to be in BIPOC and low-income communities. So if you want to dig in a little bit deeper on this, there's tons of documentaries out there available for free on YouTube, Netflix. I guess Netflix wouldn't technically be free, but there's a ton of documentaries that talk about just the manufacturing side, let alone the disposal. And Cancer Alley down in Georgia, Alabama is like a huge case study of how bad the manufacturing of this material is for the health of people living nearby. And there's even really large cities who have had shelter-in-place orders after some of these plants have had, fires or other chemical exposures in the environment, and people are not, they are told to not leave their house for multiple days at a time. So I encourage you, I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm not an expert on plastic manufacturing, but it is just as bad as many other chemical exposures that we can come across that we actually think of more as a health harm. The fun thing that we did this year to kind of see how the pandemic really impacted individual actions and behaviors was we did a study, a quick survey in the end of 2020 to see how now people are spending more time at home. We wanted to understand how their behaviors were changing. We got about 1,300 valid responses from Minneapolis residents. And the survey focused around our clothing and household goods, much of which are made of plastic, food, much of which is packaged in plastic, and then single-use and reusable items. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's a lot of information. I can post a link to the PDF where you can see this all in more detail, but the end result here is really great outcomes for waste reduction. So if anything good came out of the pandemic, it's that people were stuck at home more. They were starting to think, hey, you know what? I didn't need the t-shirt that I bought myself once every other week, so I'm just not going to do that anymore. So the orange bars stay the same, and the yellow and the dark blue purple color were the increases. So you see an increase overall of most of these behaviors that we want to see for reducing waste. overall decrease in new and used items purchased, more borrowing, more mending, more fixing. Single-use and reusable bags was a really fascinating one because there's not really too much change overall, but there's a couple of reasons for that. You know, some people, due to either health reasons or concerns, started doing grocery pickup or grocery delivery service, and they noted they didn't have a choice what type of bag they got, or they noted that like they got their grocery pickup and there were like 2 things in every plastic bag, so they ended up with a ton of plastic bags. And of course, you know, some stores stopped allowing people to use their reusable shopping bags at the start of the pandemic, which makes 0 sense to me, since I don't know how bringing your own bag that is only exposed to your everything and your germs is possibly less safe than taking a bag that's been in a store that have come in contact with hundreds of people. But the industry was really trying to push the safety of single-use plastics at the start of the pandemic as a means to get some of the bag laws repealed around the country. Thankfully, they weren't successful. Single-use and reusable items was another really interesting one. So, you know, paper plates, we saw decreases in paper plates and plastic silverware more than increases. And when you kind of think through it, you know, like, well, you know, people may say, oh, I'm home more, I can do the dishes easier, it's, you know, better for me. I can do that now. And other people might say, oh my God, I have 3 children who are schooling from home, I'm working from home, and I just can't physically do anything else. I need to get some paper plates to get food on the table, get everyone back to class, and get me back to work. So you can see some different justifications and reasoning for some of the different outcomes of the survey. One really awesome thing that we asked in this was, if essentially the Green To Go Ordinance that the city has that says all to-go packaging must be reusable, recyclable, or compostable, if we should expand that to say that restaurants can only provide straws or plastic silverware upon request. And 88% of people who took the survey said they would support that. I know even people in the waste industry, when they have said, please don't send me plastic silverware with my takeout or my delivery, they still got it delivered to them. So that is one thing I think, at least I know at least one council member who's interested in supporting that, but clearly none of that's going to happen until after the election. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of other great information on the survey. And one thing we did this past year to try and maintain some of these behaviors that people had adopted or changed during the pandemic was a campaign that we called Love Your Stuff. And so Love Your Stuff focused again around food, plastics, and clothing. And it had 3 main messages for each material type. One was to shop smart, as in know a little bit more about the company and how your stuff is produced, learn a little bit about how the workers in that industry are treated, and make good choices on buying from companies that have the same values that you do. To love the stuff you have. So, you know, if it's food, make sure you eat the food you buy. For plastics, buy durable, and clothing really, buy durable items, repair them, mend them. And doing both of those things will help us reduce waste. So there's a whole web page on all of this that has a lot more information and fun facts. And right now it is back to the plastics theme. But we've cycled through all of that at the beginning of this year. A lot of great information there, and really, you know, made me very happy because we always, being the waste management side of the city, we always talk about how to properly recycle, how to participate in the organics program. We never really get the opportunity to spend a good amount of time or energy talking about the highest part of the pyramid, that waste reduction. So that was a really fun campaign. I look forward to, my hope is next year we're going to continue it with a new campaign that I want to call Pass on Plastics. We'll see. Thoughts? Good name? Maybe. If not, throw some other ideas in the chat. So real quick, you know, I said at the beginning, if you're unsure of how to get rid of something, where it needs to go, there's many resources to find out. I'm going to touch on a few of those real quick. So the city's website is nicely updated. It is much more user-friendly, both in scannability and also searchability to find things. We took our old what to do list, made that searchable. So now you can type in a word. And here is an example. I have typed in the word cat, not to dispose of a cat, but just to show that when you type in cat, anything with the word cat in it is going to pop up. So you can type in plastic and see this long list of things that we have in there, trying to make it easier for folks to figure out how to get rid of items. We have the city's first ever open Facebook group. So if you ever have waste related questions, join the group. You can post a picture, you can ask a question and either get answers from your friends, family, and neighbors and or from our office. I should note that the Facebook group really is geared towards the city customers. However, if it's a general recycling question, recycling around the Twin Cities is pretty much the same. So that can easily apply as well. Hennepin County has their green disposal guide, which is similar, but not quite as great because I like ours better because when you type in a word, you can actually see all of the items and not hit enter to say, oh, nope, there's nothing there. So, but the county has a great resource as well and talks much more about some options than the cities. Just a reminder, the city's bring your own bag ordinance is now back in effect. So you should be charged a 5-cent fee for each single-use plastic, paper, or even a reusable bag that you get from the retailer. Really just added that reusable in there so that stores don't start giving out reusable bags for free to try and circumvent the fees for the ordinance. If you are not being charged and you want to tattle on the establishment, please let 311 know and they will follow up with the appropriate agency here at the city who will follow up and say, hey, you know, you got to show us how you're actually charging this fee, and if not, potentially issue citations, although I'd say we're probably a year away from any of that happening. End of the year, also just want to do, or end of the fall, want to do a reminder. All of our storm drains in the city lead to a waterway. Solid Waste and Recycling offers all sorts of free bags, programs, everything to help clean up the city, including graffiti. We'll give you paint and painting supplies to paint over graffiti. Free graffiti remover available at fire stations, and free litter bags, grabbers, all sorts of stuff to help keep the city clean. Couple waste reduction reuse things. This spring we held our first garden tool swap at 4 parks for 2 hours and had 200 people, 700 items brought. And all but about 30 of them were taken. So it's another thing we're going to do again this coming spring, because most of these items at an individual's house were probably going to get thrown away. So let's try and get them back to people who are going to use them rather than have them end up being waste. And if you are unaware, here's one of my favorite things. If you have not heard of Buy Nothing groups, this is your day, because if you are on Facebook, and unfortunately it's a Facebook thing right now, but they are working on their own app. But there are Buy Nothing groups for just about everywhere in the city. And all you can do on this group is ask for things, give things away, borrow things, or thank people for things, and nothing can have a fee. So example, this person's giving some shoes, a water thing, and a book. This person's saying thank you for this gate they got for their cat so their cat can go outside. This person is asking for aprons for students at their school for an art class, and they are a wonderful thing. This 3 right here, this group that was all together got too big, so it actually sprouted into 3 even smaller groups to try and keep it as hyper local as possible. And if you are familiar with your Buy Nothing group, keep in mind that you can do things that traditionally would end up in the garbage, or I'm sorry, in the recycling or the trash. So this person's giving their food containers. This person's giving a balloon. Actually, this balloon is from my neighborhood. And this balloon went to 3 different houses before it deflated. So we've got a giant plastic container. Someone's asking for a Tidy Cats pail. This was me actually asking for small glass jars for pesto because basil went crazy this year. So Buy Nothing groups aren't just for, you know, really nice things, but even things that you think nobody really wants this, give it a shot. You'll be surprised how creative people can be with things they need or don't want. And then I guess final reminder, Hennepin County also has really great programs for waste reduction and reuse. And again, the best thing we can all do is not create the waste in the first place. So find the way that, you can reduce your consumption is the best thing. And I didn't talk about bills. Right to repair, real quick, sorry. Right to repair, you can bring your car to any mechanic anywhere, because the automakers are required to provide the repair manuals and make parts available for your car to anyone. Right to repair legislation does the same things for our electronics and for farm equipment. So right now, think of our poor farmers who've had a really rough year. Their now tractor that has all sorts of computer bits on it has broken down, and they have to bring it to a certified repair place that's probably 200 miles away, or wait 3 weeks for someone to come out and fix it for them. If this passed, they would get the resources and have many more local options to have those things fixed. Same things with all of our other electronics that right now are way too costly for us to repair, so we just ship them in and get a new one. Then another really tricky thing happening at the state right now is the plastics. It's not even the plastics. The chemical industry is trying to pass legislation on advanced recycling. And you think, oh, people hear advanced and they think it's better than regular recycling. But really what they're trying to do is circumvent some other requirements around air pollution standards and all sorts of other things. But to not take up too much more time, I will say it's opposed by the Association of Plastics Recyclers. So for a plastics recycler to be against the chemical industry trying to make legislation speaks volumes, and I encourage you to look more into that too. Okay, sorry. Told you I can ramble. And you're all welcome to reach out to me anytime with any other questions.
Thanks, Kelly. So now I'd want to open it up. Sorry, I'm getting a weird echo. Okay. Open it up for a discussion, and I am wondering too, Kelly, if there are particular things like support you'd like from SEAC beyond each of us telling 5 people about not putting plastic bags in recycling. If there is something that we can do too in terms of like if there are particular initiatives that the waste that you're trying to put together that could use some support from council or the mayor's office, something that we could support.
I think, well, I mean, so the health department has had on their radar to make modifications to Green To Go for quite a while. They never actually got around to letting restaurants know that they should not be using black plastic. And I mean, I know why they didn't. They were waiting because everyone was just had sick and safe time put on them, and then also minimum wage ordinance. So they didn't want yet another thing that would likely result in some additional costs for businesses. But I do think that we need to get back to making some changes to Green To Go. One around not allowing black plastics to be considered recyclable per the ordinance. Let's get rid of these straws unless requested, and the plastic silverware for delivery or takeout. I think those are 2 easy items that we have the ability to do. I know that there's a lot of talk around litter, but I don't know if you all have seen an increase in litter in certain parts of the city like I have, but we need to get the stuff off the streets. We need to keep it out of the waterways. We need to, preserve our lakes as best we can right now, because they're very polluted, and anything we can do to help keep the community clean is going to keep the waterways and the environment in general clean. In regards to specific policy type things, I think I will have to get back to you on any upcoming items that we may request support from SEAC on.
Okay. Great.
And yes, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. I mean, there's the Save Our Seas Act, there's the Recycle Act, there's now a Compost Act, I don't have any amount of time to pay attention to what's going on at the federal level. Like, I think, so We were the closest state to pass right to repair a couple years ago. And I think now that Biden has essentially said to the Federal Trade Commission that like something in their green, green guides? I can't remember what they actually call it, but I think technically it's going to happen at a federal level now. So I don't know what's going to go on at the state, but there's so much legislation and you need like 5 staff people just to pay attention to what's going on waste wise. Yeah.
Leslie, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. I have several questions, but
yeah.
Let me start with the first one, with plastics. Because some are dirty and people are throwing them in the recycle, how much is going actually to hurt to be burned? And is there a plan to change the air monitors so we know exactly how much mercury, diox, and furans are coming from the plastics that are being burned in our city from HRC? And then the other one is, what do you guys do with the hospital waste? And is it going to a landfill? And is there a separate incinerator for the hospital waste? And is that being burnt as well in the state of Minnesota? And
I am not going to be able to answer the HRC questions because it is the county's facility. So I unfortunately am not the person to answer if they're making changes to the scrubbers or anything on that lines. Hospital waste, they're going to have multiple different waste streams. We do not pick up the hospital waste either, so it would be dependent on who the hauler is there. But because HRC is so close to the entirety of downtown Minneapolis, my assumption is that anything that is not considered biomedical or biohazard waste is probably going to HRC. And then anything that is a biohazard or biomedical is likely going to a different facility. And I honestly don't know where the closest one is actually, hold on, wait. Suzanne can probably answer that question better than I can because she works in the industry.
Okay, well then, since you don't know, since you don't know about what's going on with HRC, how much plastic waste is being sent to HRC that is contaminated, that Eureka is not using, that you see that's generated on the city level that you're picking up the garbage? How much are you sending there, or that you know is being sent there from the city?
So as of right now, essentially any of your 1, 2, 5 plastics that are not black in color that are going into your recycling cart, those are going to be recycled. If there's a little bit of food residue on it or even a fair amount, so long as it's in the right cart and it gets properly sorted, it's going to go and be recycled. The only information we would have right now on what plastics that are going in the trash are going to HRC is going to be from that Hennepin County waste sort that they did back in 2016. And I can paste the link to that in the chat here for you in just a minute. I do believe they break down the recyclable piece of the pie by material type. Our capture rate study that we are planning to do next year will give us a better idea on exactly what you're looking for.
Is it something where Eureka tells you how much they end up like sending out from Eureka to be trashed elsewhere?
So essentially our contamination rate, our 9.51%, that is going to be, the percent of the total from their facility that either went to HRC or was managed in some other way. And I say managed in some other way because they do get things like propane cylinders or electronics or things that are hazardous waste that should not also never have been put in the recycling cart, but is not going to HRC.
To HRC, yeah.
Yeah. So, but they don't, as far as I know, they don't for us, they do not break that down in terms of of your 9.8%, here's the percentage that was plastic bags, here's the percentage that was black plastic. They might have that information for the facility as a whole, but they don't have that for us.
Okay.
And we do, I should note, we partner with Eureka to offer virtual recycling facility tours. And our next one is actually tomorrow morning from 8 to 9:30. So if anyone wants to join on that, I think we have like 5 spots open. Just say like, add me to the Eureka tour in the chat and I'll send you the link to be able to join that here in just a minute.
Leslie, did that answer your questions, at least to the best of Kelly's ability?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. And I can email you someone at Hennepin County you can reach out to around her questions as well.
And I've been working on that for several months. Now, as far as the pickup, and you guys, the city picks it up, is there plans to give incentives to those that recycle? I'm born and raised in Minnesota and Minneapolis. There used to be a time where the homeowners could get some kind of incentive off their water bill for recycling. And I see that program is no longer in existence. So I was wondering, was that coming back up to help? I mean,
So what happened is when we had the multi-sort program, so the big curbside rectangular bins, there was a recycling program credit that was offered or applied to utility bills. And when we switched to single sort recycling and rolled out the big blue carts, we actually reduced the base fee for garbage and recycling pickup services by the amount of that credit. So it essentially gave everyone in the city that $7 credit for participating because it's so much easier, and we assumed that, pretty much everyone was going to participate. So everyone was kind of permanently given the credit at that time.
But did you talk about the small cart fees?
Oh, yeah. So there are price differences for the big garbage cart and the small garbage cart. So you can save additional money off of your bill by going from either multiple garbage carts down to one, or from one big one down to one small one. Currently, that price difference is only $3 a month. So the small cart is a $2 fee per month, and the big cart is $5 per large cart. However, that is on our to-do list in the next couple years to do a rate study and see how we can change the rates around to incentivize more people to switch down to that smaller cart and effectively, reduce the amount of waste they have by recycling, composting more, and or making some other behavior changes. So that'll be coming in a couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Barbara?
Oh, I just wondered, it just occurred to me, on the recycling plastic, if I put it in the recycle bin, if it's 1, 2, or 5, you will take care of it. And if I put it in a black bag thing and picked up, HERC do they recycle the same thing?
Nope, there is no sorting of anything at HERC. There is no space for them to add any equipment to sort stuff before it goes in there.
Okay.
The only thing,
I think that they sort for some hazardous things, just like trying to see if there's something that shouldn't be being burned.
Yeah, if they see things or they see like big metal items or mattresses, they will get those things out of there, but there's no conveyor belts to like rip open bags and see everything that's in there prior to it going into the furnace.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm you know what? I went to Seattle and they have a whole different recycling program there. And I was wondering, because Minneapolis, new growth of population and recycling is a thing that we really need to do. Have you looked into any other cities to see what's working for them as far as recycling? And I think you would be very surprised, Kelly, if you were to take that trip to Seattle, besides the view and the vacation, just the way that they recycle their goods there.
Yeah, so we talk to and work with other cities all the time, and Seattle is very unique because they do they own all of the transfer stations, so they get a lot of revenue from their transfer stations to regularly do sorts. So like the sort Hennepin County did on our trash, Seattle does that for the residential sector every 3 years. They do it for the commercial sector every 3 years. They do it for the multi-unit sector every 3 years. So they have a much greater ability to get funds to do more of these ongoing studies than we currently have here in Minneapolis. Another really thing that I didn't point out that I should, but our contamination rate of 9.52% is actually incredibly low for a major metropolitan city. A lot of bigger communities get really excited when they've done some outreach and education and taken their contamination rate from like 45% down to 35%. And we've never gone over 10%. So people do generally, do a really good job here in the city. However, I want to see it down to like 5%. But we as a whole have very clean recycling compared to other large cities in the United States. So everyone should give themselves a little pat on the back for that. You are muted, Erin.
There are 2 more hands that are raised, so Tess and then Toya.
Thanks, Kelly. A couple questions. You kind of skimmed over the black plastic part about restaurants. If you could fill in a little more detail on that. And then if I recall correctly, the plastic or the bag, the 5-cent fee came in because there was an attempt to have a plastic bag ban, and then there was action at the state level that prevented that.
Yep.
Is there any chance of that getting overturned at the state level? And if we're still just stuck with the fee right now, does it stay at 5 cents or does it get increased at any point? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Black plastics first. So the Green To Go Ordinance, which was passed, I want to say like 2016. I could be wrong on that. Only allows restaurants to use takeout or to-go containers that are reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And in terms how the ordinance defined recyclable was 1, 2, or 5, but did not mention the color piece. So technically, all of the containers that you see out there that are black plastics are still allowed. So the health department is aware that, black plastics aren't actually recyclable through the existing sorting equipment and technologies that recycling facilities have, but they haven't gone around to actually making the official change and letting the food establishments know that they can no longer use black plastics. So that is the piece that I think should be coming hopefully soon. So like I said, they had, the reason they didn't move forward with it as quickly is there were other requirements put on businesses that they didn't want to add too much onto the plate at one time. And then COVID hit. So I'm hoping that it's something that will come back up pretty quick here. Then around the plastic bags, you are correct. We did originally ban single use. Here's a tricky one. We banned single use plastic bags and put a 5-cent fee on paper bags. And the day before the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance was originally set to go into effect, the state banned our ability to ban plastic bags. The only way I see that being overturned at the state level is to get support from elsewhere in the state. And by that, I mean we need folks all over greater Minnesota and the metro to contact their elected officials to say, we want to repeal this plastic bag ban preemption law that's in statute. And we think that cities should be allowed to make those choices on behalf of their businesses and residents. I think the elected officials who represent Minneapolis would all be supportive of that repeal, but it's the plastics associations out there that are going to put a lot of lobbying dollars into keeping them. Same with maybe the grocers associations. So there would be a lot of a lot of political will needed from other parties to get that passed, or to get the preemption repealed at the state, so then we could put another ban on it. One thing that did change with our update to the ordinance that is now effective is, instead of it being single-use plastic bags, it is now broadly plastic carryout bags. So some other communities who have done single-use plastic bag bans, the retailers just use 4 times as thick of plastic bags, and since they met the certain thickness requirement, they were now considered a reusable bag. So some communities essentially quadrupled the amount of plastic that was in their system by not making this slight word change. So our slight word change to any plastic carryout bag takes care of this whole potential thicker plastic bag thing coming into our markets, which I think is a good thing.
Was there one other part, Tess?
Yeah,
to
does
your
the fee stay the same? Is there anything in the
Oh.
ordinance to increase?
There is not currently, no. So that is something, again, right now, since it just went back into effect, I'd say it's probably going to be a year or two before they even start enforcing grocery stores and retailers and whatnot for not charging the fee. Because, we don't want to punish everyone immediately. We want to help them come into compliance. But then I think after that would be a time to approach elected officials if you feel that there's a need to increase that fee amount.
And I will say, Tess, that is something that some SEAC members felt really strongly about when we were writing a letter of support for the change after what the state legislature did, and talked about, how can we work on increasing fees over time. So I think after the meeting today, I'll make sure to send that letter around too, just so folks can see that and see if it's something we want to bring up in the future. Toya?
Awesome. I have a 2-part question, and hopefully I can do this pretty quickly. And I also apologize that I wasn't here for the first part of the meeting because of a time conflict. So if this has been answered, apologies. My first question is regarding especially like takeout containers and styrofoam specifically. I'm kind of looking at the people or the businesses that usually have styrofoam, kind of thinking about a lot of like Mexican and Latino restaurants, as well as Somali restaurants. And it would definitely be very unfortunate if they were disproportionately impacted by a fee. And so I was wondering if there are any plans or considerations for like a monetary incentive to help them, I guess, transition to a recyclable or compostable or some other alternative product, especially since knowing, as I've been in supply chain as well, that, styrofoam is like cutting pennies, and then getting anything that's like kind of recyclable is cheap, quote unquote, but, not as cheap. So.
Yeah, so actually number 6 plastics, which would include all styrofoam and also the rigid alternative that would look like a standard clamshell you'd get a salad or a cold sandwich in, has not been allowed since 2016 or 17 per Green To Go. So all of those restaurants would definitely be in violation of the ordinance as is currently written. I know the small business team had done a lot of outreach and education back in the day to try and help people find those alternatives. The health department held a couple different food, what were they calling them? Food vendor fairs, where they brought in a bunch of different distributors of different type of packaging to try and help restaurants essentially pit one company against the other for getting them a lower cost alternative to what they're currently using that did meet the Green To Go packaging ordinance requirements. I do not know if there's anything currently. I can definitely ask the health department what resources they have for folks who still are using non-compliant containers to help make that transition. But that is a health department ordinance that the food inspectors enforce.
Okay, just because like I thought that was like already passed, and I was like, well, definitely still seeing it though.
Yep. Nope. I'm right there with you, and I get a lot of those complaints, and all I do when they come my way is pass it on to 311 and say, hey, 311, please get this to the appropriate health inspector, that this establishment's not in compliance with Green to Go.
And my last question, which might be kind of a short answer, is that are we as like a city, are we ever planning on like going away from single stream recycling to perhaps like I guess, what is it called, like sorted, like having people sort it themselves?
We just made the transition to single sort back in 2012. Wait, no, was that 2012? Yeah, 2012, 2013 is when the big blue carts rolled out. The industry as a whole right now in the United States is pretty much all single sort. So if we went to a multi-sort program again, we would probably be responsible ourselves for any amount of contamination cleanup and marketing that material to different buyers, because there really is no private company that's offering those services in the Twin Cities at this time. So I don't see that happening. I know like Sweden's a crazy example for all sorts of things, because they have like on Monday you set out your green glass, and on Tuesday you set out your paper, and yeah.
I'm a total geek. I like look at other countries and like their little like sorting days and stuff like that, and I'm like, ooh, that's so cool. But I guess I started my recycling journey in a town actually that you had to sort things yourself, and so
yeah, so we just came away from that, and we were probably the last community in the Twin Cities Metro to do so. And we did see a 30% increase in volume of recyclables. So it really did not only, and we saw an increase in people participating. So it made it easier for those who thought multi-sort was too complicated to participate. And, you know, for people who said, man, I don't want a fourth curbside recycling bin and need to get paper bags to put all this stuff in. So any extra they had that didn't fit in their bins was probably ending up in a garbage cart. We did see more of that getting into recycling carts because the carts provided more volume, and it was easier for folks to participate too.
So we don't have a ton of time left here with Kelly, just so we can get to some of the other things on our agenda. So I am going to Leslie, if you don't mind, pass it over to Hannah first, and if there's still a little bit of time before 6:40, hand it back on over to you. So Hannah.
Hi, thanks so much, Kelly. I really appreciate the presentation, especially being somebody that works in the waste industry. One thing that we have been encountering a lot, just working with specifically restaurants and kind of in the context of the Green To Go Ordinance, is what is compostable and what is acceptable in our industrial composting facilities. So my question is, I know that, you know, it's probably best to focus on simplicity of language, but in terms of adjusting the language in that Green To Go Ordinance to kind of get some of the plastic out, is there going to be additional language regarding what is acceptable for a compostable product?
It's a good question. It's a question that's going to come up with state law here soon as well, because typically, so essentially the composting facilities will accept food service items that are BPI certified, and those would be anything that's entirely plastic or plastic lined, has to be BPI certified, or else they don't want it. BPI scientifically tests those items to make sure they will fully and safely break down in the composting process, leaving no unnatural byproducts. The issue with city ordinance and state law is typically nobody calls out individual company names in those types of spaces. So the way that what is accepted for organics is in Green To Go. And also, I should note, with my nonprofit hat on, I'm on the board of the Minnesota Composting Council. We've been working for 2 years to get a current state law around compostable bags expanded to compostable food service packaging and how things can and can't be labeled. currently both the city ordinance and the draft language for the state law use the ASTM, which would be the testing method standards to specify what is compostable, because again, it's really not normal practice to call out individual companies in ordinances or laws. So I don't know if I've helped really with that, but I know some of the educational materials that the health department has for Green To Go does say have a look for this logo, which is the BPI logo, to tell if items are compostable. And that's the same thing that we do on the residential side as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Yep.
And there's still just like 2 minutes left. So Leslie, did you still have a question?
Everyone's talking about increasing the plastic bags. Is there a way that the manufacturers of these plastic bags can be charged or increase a fee? Target, Walmart, and all this yuckity yuck. I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can increase them to be charged for the manufacturing of the bags themselves?
I am unaware of anyone doing that at a city level. I feel like that's something that may be feasible at a state level, and most definitely at the federal level. There's a lot of talk around producer responsibility bills that would put on a fee per item produced. So that's one version. The other version is the minimum post-consumer recycled content bills that are out there. But I'm unaware of that happening at a city level. And SEAC did a whole bunch of research. I don't think that was included in any of the research prior to the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance coming forward that SEAC did either. I still have that. I can look back at it, but.
Okay, great. Well, I want to say thank you again for coming and presenting. And if you want to follow up with us in terms of the contact at Hennepin County for some of Leslie's questions and stuff. Yep. And whatever else there was that we also talked about for you to follow up with us. We'll look forward to that.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'll throw a couple links in the chat for you all here before I take off for the evening, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to come speak to you, and I'm always happy, and I'll throw my email in there too. If any of you have any specific questions or want to chat further about anything, just feel free to reach out.
Great.
All right,
thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Kelly. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. So moving on to discussion, I think right now, just based off of what I heard from Kelly, I'm not sure if there are specific like immediate next steps that we could be taking in terms of our SEAC role. But if you have particular ideas about something you might want SEAC to focus on based on the conversation, feel free to start dropping them into the chat and we can talk about them when we get to the, agenda items section of today's meeting. Now we're going to move on to the 100% renewable electricity letter. I sent it around to everybody via email when I had sent the draft version to Kim. Again, it was draft because it hadn't been approved by SEAC yet. And so I wanted to see if there were any particular changes folks wanted to make to the letter prior to approving the letter.
Aaron, I don't have an edit. I just want to go on the record and note that I'm recusing myself from this conversation due to my employer.
Thank you, Nick. Barbara?
Well, I wondered how the electricity is calculated, because if you say, well, Excel will or is or something using so much renewable energy, and then obviously they're doing the inverse of that of non-renewable, then when the city turns on its lights, some's coming over the transmission line that's renewable and non-renewable. You're using non-renewable energy there. So how do you do the calculation to say even if you had your own solar panels or something, how can you get rid of essentially of that non-renewable portion?
We do touch on it briefly in the letter in terms of storage and stuff, but we don't get as granular as the fact that the current grid mix is not 100% renewable. I'm not sure if that's a particular change that we'd want to make. Kim?
I was just going to make a comment on that too. You know, this is really sort of a guidepost for how we develop the policy towards going forward with this. It's not necessarily this is the exact way this is a 10-year process. We're trying to really set a goalpost out there. It's not as much challenging the technical side of how we get it in. We're not we do not have access to distribution grid systems or transmission issues. And so it's a little bit more challenging to be able to give the specifics of things like when something will be installed or if there's distribution transmission. What we need to do is figure out, like, if we did this based on what's been going on and the increase in electrification and EV vehicles, what is the amount of power we need overall? And knowing what we know that's already in place that Excel's agreed to, and then knowing what we have with our own city policies, which includes not renewing the nuclear licenses for the 2 nuclear plants. So it's a big difference within this plan. Excel's very much carbon, focused on carbon. Nuclear is okay. We'll extend it another 20, 40 years. Whether you agree with that or not, the position has been taken by the city council in specific resolution that they do not support the extension of the nuclear power plants. And therefore, we need to figure out how we get to 100% renewable electricity by 2030, community-wide, not taking in the 20 or 25% carbon-free electricity that comes from Excel. And ultimately, that and the desire here at the city to be, and we've heard this many, many times, to have opportunities for ownership and self-reliance and resiliency at the local level within the community, as well as it spurring investment in properties, homes, and certainly hopefully benefiting many multifamily properties, for example, that are set aside or that are, you know, either public housing or other low-income housing, so that people have the benefit of locally produced renewable electricity. So that's why we want to like focus on those things. It's a bit of a couple of, you know, there's a couple of different major pieces, but there's a lot of subtlety there. But nuclear is a big piece, and local ownership and resiliency and microgrid concepts are really what's a big driver of why we're so focused on local solar energy in Minneapolis in that plan.
Thank you.
So is there anybody who wants to make a motion of either amending the letter or approving it as written?
This is Leslie. I want to make the motion to approve the letter as written.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Lauren. I'll second.
Thanks, Lauren. Kim, roll call.
Thank you. Okay, yay or nay? Max Dalton.
Yay.
Indigo David Liu.
Yay.
I don't see Mark on there. I'll say Mark Denon if he happens to joined us. Tess Stornfeld.
Yay.
Matthew. Matthew, are you still with us?
He had to drop off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sandy Fazeli.
Yes.
Lauren Fleming.
Yes.
Leslie Jackson.
Yay.
Anna Johnson. Toya Lopez.
Yay.
Barbara Lundy.
Abstain.
Noted. Nick Minderman.
I must also abstain.
Yep.
Yep.
So, Jacqueline.
Yay.
And Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you. We have 9 yays and 2 abstentions. That motion carries.
Okay, so I think we just need to run through some of these updates pretty quick before we talk about open streets this weekend. Julia and Kim, do you want to provide an update on the science-based targets guidelines for cities process?
I'm just going to ask Julie if she wants to just like highlight our next meeting and stuff. We've had one meeting and we're having another one. Our first one was sort of just creating some grounding. And Julie, do you want to like let us know what the date is for our next meeting and what we've got for our agenda for that?
Sure. So the next meeting is, let me make sure I have this correct.
Wednesday.
No, sorry, Wednesday. Thank you. I was like, I know it's one of those. Next Wednesday, the 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. And I think we're just going to be essentially going over what we talked about in the last meeting and talking about nailing down some actual targets that we could suggest to the city. And we have a document that can help us kind of create a methodology to do that.
Great. So if you want to participate in that and you didn't end up seeing an email from Julia with the meeting invitation, reach out to Julia and we can make sure that it gets over to you. So again, that's a week from today.
And I'll put that in the chat too.
Okay, perfect. Update in terms of Roof Depot.
Hey, Aaron,
Nick?
Could I just note that on the science-based targets, because it hasn't been noticed as a meeting, we need to be careful about how many people attend.
Yes.
So if we exceeded quorum, we would technically have to notice it as a meeting, which means we can do it, but we just have to know if people plan to attend right now to make sure that it does get noticed.
Yep. Thank you, Nick, for that clarification. So yes, if you are planning on attending, make sure that Julia and Kim are aware so that we can make sure that if there are more than 9 of us on it, or whatever the number is.
We'll be back up to let's see, 10. Yeah.
Okay.
So but right now it's 8. Thank you, Nick. You're absolutely right. We did verify that with the clerk's office, and Aaron and I spoke about that in setting this up. Right now, I think we're at 4 or 5. So we're welcome to join a couple other people if they'd like to. Okay. And I'll just add just real quickly to that we will be looking at some of the comparison tools that have been looked at, like per capita emissions. And also things like, per capita income, things like that. Those actually influence the fair share science-based targets. But I think we'll also have to have like a realization of like how it's like connects with the other targets that Hennepin County just set and St. Paul set in 2019, 2020. So we've got to balance those components.
So onto Roof Depot right now, based on information that I've heard from Alondra Cano's aide, it sounds like the earliest that they would start doing any demolition on Roof Depot would be early, like first quarter 2022. Councilmember Cano has been putting together some meetings. I have no idea how I got on her email list for it, but if you're interested, I'd be happy to forward those meetings along. They just had one last week on Thursday, and then she's already planning another one for after the election to talk about what some next steps might be given the results of the council member elections. So if that is something that you're interested in, drop it in the chat and I will forward those emails along to you. Let's see. I haven't heard anything about Upper Harbor Terminal recently.
I can just give a real quick update. Last week, the city council did approve the Upper Harbor Terminal's overall integrated plan, which includes, infrastructure improvements, basically the general concept plan, which does lock down, the 19 acres of parkland and the entertainment facility as well. They're still working on, final sustainability commitments on that, and I've been part of a committee that's been working on sustainability and environmental justice at, intersection. Really trying to make this an example of how it could be a carbon-free community using district energy, and since all this intersection of infrastructure is being developed, car-free zones, really just taking a look at how the development happens as far as like habitat, stormwater retention, wildlife protection, or wildlife and habitat expansion, are all things that are part of that overall plan. So that did pass. It is linked in the our agenda, and there's obviously a lot of detail with it. So that is moving forward. And I just wanted to also say that the Hiawatha project, what was approved is what's referred to as option B, which includes a 3 acre set aside at 28th and 28th Street, and sorry, I'm forgetting the avenue there, but 20th or 19th or something like that avenue on that southwest corner of the overall site there, pulling out 3 acres, but it does include the demolition of the actual roof depot building and the expansion of the majority of the buildings and facilities that are there. So that's what happened, and so we'll see how it rolls out. And of course, it's been going on for a long time, so it could change depending on how elections roll out and occur too. So,
Tess, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to note that the MPRB comment period on the park portion of UHT has a comment deadline tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for that. Update on Metro Transit plans for EV bus purchases. I don't know if it's something that's short.
Yeah, I kind of gave the full sort of update that I got. We're working on coming up with an overall city policy, something for us to consider moving forward, if some tweaks on it. We've got some comment periods, opportunities in the next few months.
Okay. So I think at this point, one of the last things that we have are announcements. So first one will be that we do have a table at Open Streets on Minnehaha if people are interested in tabling. Right now, we have me signed up for the first shift, so 11 to 2-ish. And Tess has mentioned being able to do 2 to 5. The location is actually like a block away from my house, so chances are I can help with cleanup. I just want a chance to walk up and down Minnehaha at some point to see the other things that are going on. But if you are able to help out with that, I would really appreciate additional support. Basically just standing there and being able to ask people questions about what they're interested in, us looking at as a commission, the sort of environmental concerns that they have that we might be able to address, and just working on connecting to people who are interested in sustainability and the environment, but aren't here on SEAC. So if you can shoot me an email or put something into the chat about whether or not you'd be able to participate, I'd really appreciate it. It's coming up on Sunday, the 24th. from 11 to 5. And the table location is on Minnehaha Avenue, just south of 39th Street is what it looks like.
I forgot that this weekend is MEA and I'm going to be out of town, unfortunately.
Okay.
So if anyone is available, much appreciated if you're around and can step up to take that. Sorry, Erin. Thanks.
No, that's okay. If anything, we can have me there from 11 to 2, and then I can work on taking things down at that point in time. But if there are people who are able to help out and be there for at least some duration of the 11 to 5 time, I'd really appreciate it. So please feel free to send me an email. Are there any other SEAC announcements or announcements SEAC commissioners have for each other?
Can I just make one announcement that was in the agenda regarding our next meeting?
Sure. Oh, yes.
Just to sort of highlight that I don't have a definitive answer on whether our meeting will be virtual next month. It is likely to be, but the council has not voted on it. So the current emergency declaration goes through the end of October and has not been extended. So I assume it's likely to be extended as virtual meetings through the end of the year at least. But I will keep you informed because it may be in person. If it is, I've already reserved for November and December room 132 of City Hall for the in-person meeting. So just wanted to give you a highlight on that. And of course, also highlight the fact that we'll be joined by our 4 new SEAC commissioners for our November meeting as well too. So hopefully that'll come through on, I'm very confident it'll come through on Friday with the full council vote and the mayor's signature.
Okay. And then take a look at some of the different hyperlinks and stuff that Kim included in the updates and announcements. There's a bike and scooter survey, and you can look at the mobility RFP, the joint one that was put together by Minneapolis and St. Paul. There's information in there too about the time of rent energy disclosure program, other stuff like that.
I just wanted to ask, Kim, do you know for the bike and scooter survey, is there a closing date?
There is, but I don't know it offhand. So I could just, it is before our next meeting actually. So, and I will click on it here and.
Because it doesn't say on the survey itself.
There's the RFP is like a separate thing from the survey.
If there's some sort of like landing page that has the link to the survey with the deadline and maybe some more information, that would be easier to share as well. Maybe you could just send that around to us.
I will certainly do that. You're right. I looked at this and it's a little sketchy on that. But what I've, Danielle Elkins, who is the manager of transport at the Public Works Department and Transportation Mobility, will be at our meeting on the 17th, and she would have joined us today. But just the timing of when everything had to get approved and the RFP out, it's just the open time of discussing that didn't end up happening. So she will be back, and she told me that the RFP will be closed by that November 17th date. So for sure it's before then. I will follow up with an email.
Okay, perfect. Any other particular announcements or questions, recognizing that we are 2 minutes past 7? Hearing none, I would say that we can probably work on adjourning.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, sounds good. Does somebody want a second?
We don't actually need to take like the roll call.
Well, I know that we don't
It's
need to
only
take
if
a roll
someone
call, but we need to just say like all aye or just be like.
No, just that. Is there any objections?
Okay. Are there any objections? Hearing none. I hope you all have a good rest of your October. Hope to see some of you on Sunday. Otherwise, good luck with Election Day and see you on the 17th. or potentially October 27th if you're doing the science-based targets thing. So, bye everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.